We've been told a lot that why do you do this every year, and it's bad news every year. We are often told that.
Hi, my name is Pranav Kothari, and I've been very interested in the field of assessments and personalized learning. So on the show today, we have Dr. Rukmini Banerji, who has actually lived and breathed assessments and teaching at the right level. I really want to ask Dr. Rukmini Banerji, how has she led a team of 6,000 people across India, and at that scale, managed to retain some core principles that are uniform while allowing people to be themselves. I want to hear about the stories of a few people who have managed to grow from humble beginnings to leadership positions within the Pratham portfolio. Given that Dr. Banerji has a PhD, I'm going to ask her questions on what is the role of research and applied research, and how has that shaped what Pratham is doing and continues to do, and how have they pivoted based on insights from those assessments. So glad to have you here, and looking forward to the chat. So given that you've done this for 14 years, what are some of the biggest challenges you've faced in this realm of student learning outcomes, and how has this changed over the years? People's attitudes towards assessments, people's knowledge, and building this vocabulary that learning outcomes are important. If you could give a longitudinal thing of how attitudes have changed, what things have changed, what challenges you've faced, that'd be great to hear.
So, I would say that 14, 15-year history in the history of India is, not even a drop in the ocean. And, occasionally you feel like, oh God, nothing is changing. But exactly on this point of the conversation, the understanding, and the action on learning outcomes, I think has changed quite a lot in the last, and you would agree, you are part of the changing landscape over the last 10, 15 years. And to me, it looks like all the things that we have all done, I mean, naturally we'll say this, but I'm sure that's true, other people will say it also, has contributed to this shift. So right from the beginning of ASER, one of the reasons to keep it very simple, to keep it at the household level, to involve district organizations, was that there should be talk about learning outcomes. And that talk should be based on a real understanding of what is on the ground. And that talk, we believe that when many people start talking about a problem, then the problem becomes accepted. And then once the problem is accepted, becomes visible, then there will be many solutions that will come. And to some extent, I think that is what has happened. The first couple of years of ASER, there was a lot of shock and awe. But even at that time, as early as 2006 or 7, we would use ASER as a way to start having new conversations with people with whom you may not have talked otherwise. Right? And those conversations often were not, smooth conversations. But I think unless you can talk about things that need to be talked about, where it is possible that one party doesn't really want to talk about it, but you're able to continue a conversation, then the hope for things changing is quite high. So I remember Gujarat, and that's of particular, I'm sure, interest to you. First 1 or 2 years when we would have the state level discussions on ASER, there would be the partners who did ASER, who would be usually NGOs or colleges or universities, and then there would be the government. And it would be like, I remember Willema coming back after a meeting saying, next time I go, I'm going to wear an armor. Because people would be so. Now, passion around the topic, whether positive or negative, I think is a good thing, because it means that you care. You care one way or the other. And the same Gujarat government, after maybe a couple of years, sometime, when did Gunotsav start? Maybe 2007, 8. Yeah. I mean, maybe the third year of Gunotsav, the same government invited the ASER team to come and evaluate the evaluation of Gunotsav. So a pendulum swing. I mean, they're not still saying that ASER is great, but the fact that the people who are behind ASER are okay people, So I think that the over time, the conversation about learning outcomes has certainly widened and deepened. I think assessments, we all see that the assessment scene has really, I would say, almost exploded, and maybe there's too much assessment now. But I think there is also an understanding that we need for our conditions to try different kinds of methods of doing assessment. how people are arguing and on how assessment leads to action, I think is also broadened. So maybe ASER was started a little too early, although I don't think so, but I think it has taken 10 years for us to reach where we are. And where we've reached, I think, is that there's a widespread recognition that learning outcomes are important. We see it even in the amendment to the RTE. We see a lot of action at different levels, and I think what to do about it is still being discussed and experimented with. And similarly, I would say that even on the assessment front, I think there's a far wider range of tools, of metrics, of mechanisms that are out there. What we don't have, I think, is a few common consensuses on a few things that ought to be done. So for example, one of the things that we have really tried to do through ASER is to say, if a lot of children don't know how to read, a pen and paper test is not the right way to go. And while one can argue that as you go higher in the school grades, you have to have a pen and paper test, because the things that you're trying to assess are not accessible perhaps easily in any other way. But certainly for grade 3, even I would say for grade 5, if we want to really assess foundational learning, then we have to use some method which is actually one-on-one.
Right.
But with the rise of easily available technology, I think that this barrier will also be will be easy to deal with
because you think like the tablet can do the voiceover.
Yeah, or you can capture voice. You can capture voice. You can capture how children are reading. You can. I know that people who are working with technology, you can also look at a whole variety of other things. I think solutions will also come. I think the method by which you try to understand a problem is already a first step in how you get to a solution. And I think that there will be a whole variety of things that we will do. So as a country, I feel we should be able to solve at least the foundational learning problem quickly. There may be many other things that we still will be grappling with.
So Rukmini, you have a lot of this bent towards research. You've done a PhD yourself, and Pratham as an organization has believed in this from the beginning. You're amongst the first NGOs to do a partnership with JPAL. So why is this orientation there? What benefits have you seen come out from it?
So yes, I have a PhD, although I don't know what use that PhD is. And I often say that if I call like a senior government officer's office and I say, hi, this is Rukmini, then usually the person who I'm looking for is not available. But if I say Dr. Banerji, I often get through. So I think the PhD has a big team. No, I think more seriously, the key original people of Pratham, the two founders, for example, Madhav Chavan and Farida Lambe, are both university people. Madhav was a chemistry professor. Farida was a social work. She was the principal of the social work college, vice principal of the college in Bombay. So I think the university orientation of the founders does have something to do with it. People like me who joined early on but were not one of the founders. I came from a completely research background, but I had a lot of interest in applied research. But overall, I would say that perhaps one way to deal with high ambition, no money, and limited capability of the team that we are working with, the only way perhaps to mediate all this is to say, what are we the best at? Given the many needs that any community or any school may have, and the fact that you have very limited resources, and recognizing that we as a team don't have all the capabilities that are needed. So what is the best fit between what we can do, who we are, and what needs to be done of the many? I can't see what other way you would do that other than using evidence of your impact.
So has that helped you? Has independent evaluation of your programs helped you grow in your fundraising? So
I would say first is, having a real curiosity and a real skepticism about what are we really good at, and let's figure it out, because so many things can be done, has been very helpful right from the beginning. The second, I think, is that if that is the curiosity that, say, some of the leaders have, how do you let this curiosity seep all the way down? And I remember in my early days, I did a lot of work with helping our Balwadi team come up with metrics that made sense for improving programs. And I used to really enjoy what are the 5 things that you as a Balwadi supervisor will think it's important, and how different would those 5 be from some researcher who is, and actually these are not very different. And I think, imbuing a whole team and a whole big organization with curiosity and skepticism about your own work is a good thing, because then you work harder, you're constantly trying to think, this looks good, but how will I know that this is for real? So I would say evidence and the experimentation to get to, and how you get that evidence to match with what is possible, I think has been there right throughout. And that's probably one of the reasons that I've enjoyed being with Pratham for so long. Abhijit and Esther came to us well before they became JPAL. Right, yeah.
Right.
So we predate JPAL, So they sometimes invite us to their 10th or whatever, 15th year celebrations. And I say, but, we are there from, maybe before you were conceived. And I think that I remember being very suspicious as to why these MIT professors want to study something like Pratham and what is in it for them and so on and so forth. And Madhav is far more open-minded and less suspicious of anyone than I am. But then since I was the one with the so-called research background, I worked with them right from their first project. And very quickly you realize that these are very smart people, and that having smart people with keen eyes look at what you're doing only adds to the whole thing. And I think we were also very fortunate that, and I now realize, having worked with many other people, that they really looked upon us as equal partners. So they were there to learn how whatever we were doing at the time is worth looking at and how that can scale. And we were interested in sort of seeing through their eyes what could be done.
Right.
So I would say that a couple of things have really helped us. Number one, that they came to us of their own will, and we engaged with them at our own will. There was no pressure on anyone to evaluate anything.
Right.
So it was truly a partnership from the beginning. And secondly, I think that after the first one or two projects that we did together, we realized the benefits, mutual benefits of doing this, even in the process of doing it. The outcomes being good and being shared world over, of course, is there. But to me, the real intrinsic benefits of having a set of people with keen eyes and different skills look at what you're doing and have conversations about how do we improve this, how do we measure that, I think has big benefits on both sides. So working with JPAL, I think certainly helped on the external front, but I think it brought us a lot of benefits internally. It brought more rigor to how we think about things. It brought more understanding of what kind of measurement is doable. It brought an understanding of how do you put all these different pieces together. And I think over the last 10 years, we've on both sides been much braver about saying that now we will start, when we start thinking about something, we'll put an RCT in there, because it helps the thinking, it helps the evolution. And over the last 15 years, I think we've had 7 or 8 RCTs. And the other thing I think we've learned on both sides is that the layering only strengthens the whole thing. So one RCT, any good study comes up with some results, but comes up with many more questions. And you should have you should be a lambi race ka ghoda to be able to carry forth that, and the new questions are welcome questions.
Right.
That's what the next, and we've been lucky as well. I think that we've been able to find the funds to continue the partnership at a level that it ought to be. So if you're going to do a randomized control trial, there is no shortcut on how you randomize.
Right.
But that costs money.
Right.
And so, over the years, whoever, gods of randomization have been kind, and whenever we've thought this is now a new project, a new idea that we want to explore, how can we do it together?
I'm really amazed by how, with both those stories, something that you believed in, but the way that matured took a different turn, because the RCTs measured other things, you got different insights from coming, and in some ways maybe it kept a reality check on personal ambition, personal dream, sort of overriding reality. So sometimes people just get so married with a theory of change that they have come up with, and without an independent evaluation sort of throwing up insights, people are just sort of running with it, scaling it up. Whereas in this case, I find there's a lot of strategic thinking, pivots, whatever you may want to call it, and that has happened as a result of independent evaluations.
So I would say partly it's independent evaluation, and partly it is also engaging with others deeply, so that you're willing to look at the same. I mean, the results can be looked at in many different ways, and this openness to look at results, I think the openness was on both sides. But alongside with I think the evolution of our thinking, I mean, to be fair, we haven't completely abandoned something and done something totally different.
Right.
But the evolution and the change has happened both as a result, I would say, of internal evidence, external evidence, and internal discussions on the experimentation and the experiences that you see on the ground. So, in the first 1 or 2 RCTs, we were very careful that this has to be kept absolutely pristine, and then we learned that the process of doing this teaches you so much that we would sometimes rotate teams so that you would learn. Right. So, treatment 1, treatment 2, treatment 3 are already 3 treatments.
Right.
And you're evaluating them because you think that each of them may have some merit. And then you have to be willing to say A and B made no difference. So, all the people who worked, I remember one of my young colleagues in Bihar, and we were on one of the projects being evaluated was in Champaran, and I was traveling with her in the village. So I said, "Ye kaun sa school hai?" So she said, "Ye treatment wala school nahi hai, ye control wala school bhi nahi hai, ye beyond control ka school." So everybody's mind as well. People watch the control schools quite carefully as well, because this is what you were, trying to do different from. I think the key thing from the external evaluations, from our own internal measurement work, is that you've got to be curious. If you don't have a question, then you're not interested in the answer. And very often I find that marriage, or the being married to a concept, is, I think you've already decided you don't have a question. So how, as an organization, as a country, could you have questions that propel you productively forward? Not have a question that says, I'm out there to make sure that she's wrong, but to say that, oh, that's an interesting question, let's figure it out, and depending on what we figure out, we'll take the next step.
Is this what is known as applied research?
I think this is known as critical thinking.
But really, how has the culture of
yeah.
applied research in India, what is that culture? How can that be improved in our universities, amongst a mindset, amongst our young, who are pursuing this?
I can't speak much. I've spent last 25 years in Pratham. I have no idea what happens in the world. University, no idea. Nobody invites us to go talk in any university. So I have no idea. But we do meet a lot of college students who work with you. ASER, ASER is a huge learning every year about what kinds of people have what kinds of questions, right? So I would say overall, 2 or 3 things would really help this kind of whatever we call applied research, right? And maybe applied research is real answers to some real questions. That's how I would define applied research. One is you have to be on the ground where the challenge is. A lot of times as you go to university, or you become, you go too far away from where. And I find, for example, that, being close to the ground constantly gives you challenges, right? It's very difficult to be complacent if you're seeing things which are not quite exactly what you thought or what you wanted. That in itself is a source of, keeping you restless. And the other thing is, I think that any kind of research, and applied research in particular, requires a community in which you can have these conversations. Nobody will say, oh, this is hardly a question, So how do you have and I think we've been very lucky in having and creating a community which is constantly talking to each other. Also having a big enough team that what you see in Bengal is quite different from what you see in Kashmir, and the Bengal and the Kashmir guys can come together on one platform or visit each other and say, I'll give you an example. We were working, trying to bring in mothers a lot into our work, and Odisha and Assam were having no difficulty, village after village, in in bringing mothers into support, basic reading, basic arithmetic. Seemed to be quite easy to do, and Punjab was like really struggling. And I remember in one meeting, one of our Punjab leaders saying, "Yaar, हमारे यहाँ तो माँ तो माँ ही नहीं है." The Punjab team went to Odisha and took a look, and kind of was able to, take the whatever cultural curtains aside and say, "अच्छा अच्छा, तो तुम लोग ये करते हो, तो हम भी जाके कर सकते हैं." And today we have much greater, the social structures are different, the economy is different. But I think the key idea that mothers can help kids has come, and now people are working out
Right.
how to do it. So this ability to be able to go see what somebody else is doing is, I think, also important in terms of looking for solutions. But if I give an example on what I feel on measurement, research is a big word, but if I just say measurement, we have an internal team and about 100 people team who helps Pratham programs measure it themselves. Now, coming up with a common measurement framework across 20 states in itself has a lot of negotiation that has to be done. Having it be as easy as possible, so that how much of your time and money should go into measurement.
Right.
Measurement is really important, but you can't have a 50% going into that, then where wouldn't you? So we've tried to keep it at a 5%, between a 5 and 10%. What is that? What is 5% of anyone's time?
Right.
It's difficult to calculate. But I think that even in that exercise, we look at two broad buckets: outcome measurement and process measurement. And I would say that we've done far better on outcome measurement. I mean, and now our outcomes are very simple, ability to, very ASER-like. Process measurement is a lot more difficult, and I think it needs much more methodological skill to do justice to anything deeper.
Right.
And to me, it also looks like while you can have quantitative empirical skills which are in short supply, but they're at least out there, and they're easily transferable from one discipline to another, one context to another. I think the methodological skill of doing qualitative work is much harder, and much fewer places in India who are good creators of methodologically sound or even satisfactory graduates for qualitative work.
Given that Pratham has 6,000 employees across more than 25 states in India, what parts are common? What are the unifying forces, and what parts are decentralized?
So I would say that every year, as we plan for the following year, then there's a national leadership group in which there are representatives of all states, depending on by the program. We'll probably get together, we do several reviews in a year of how far we've come and what we set out to do. And that's where probably we also discuss the next steps that we are going to take. In my time in Pratham, I see that there's a 3-year cycle. Every 3 years you kind of do some major shifts. And I've never figured out whether that's just, you're fed up with the old and you want to do new, which I'm sure there is a little bit of that. But in the 2 years of the running of something, you've learnt some things, there have been some questions that have come up, and I think that the landscape changes. I mean, India today is not the same India as 2010. And so if you're still doing those things, then you're way out of date.
Right.
So you've got to be moving with what you see are the new challenges. And sometimes the old challenges don't go away, but they have a new way of tackling it or a new form. So I would say the broad strategic design of what we are going to do is discussed kind of in a national leadership group. And then so you come up with very clear goals. We find we are quite goal oriented. If I have a clearly articulated goal, which comes with a common measurement, then the rest can be left to people to figure out how you're going to get to that goal. And we are from the same large family, so there will be variations, but they won't be dramatic variations which are way off the charts. So goal setting, common discussion, certainly common metrics, and money. So the money raising, decentralized money raising, we've not been able to do. Maybe there are ways to do it. For us, it looks more effective to do it in a more consolidated way, and then the distribution of the budgets will happen based on the size of programs. We've typically, although we are in all states, we typically, well, there are, I mean, that's a different topic, we can maybe come to that later. Hiring who builds their team, states are very decentralized about how they build their own teams, who they hire. We have states which are very formal with their hiring process, aake interview leke, test leke, then liya jata hai. There are other states which say ki everything is field based. They will take somebody new, put them into the field 15 days later, so we don't even, insist, whatever works, because the cultures in these different places are different. Some of it is also based on, the leadership structure. So, Punjab, for example, has a female leader. 70% of her team is female, and that's fine. I mean, whoever you think is your team, as long as you're able to, keep up with, what is expected. So I would say that's broadly how we work. I think we need to do, for a large and, spread out and decentralized organization, we've found that doing one common thing a year really helps, because it brings everybody back into one common narrative. So ASER, for example, for many years was a very unifying theme. And I used to notice how the key players of ASER in every state changed every year. And that's because our state teams felt that this was a very good training ground. 3 महीने में ना वो बंदा बिल्कुल तैयार होके आ जाता है, उसको सब कुछ आता है, गवर्नमेंट से बोलना आता है, सरपंच से बोलना आता है, टाइम में प्रोजेक्ट उसको एग्जीक्यूट करना आता है, बजट हैंडल कर सकता है. Many features of project management actually in the 2 months of ASER happened. And so we saw that people were sending them as kind of training ground. As soon as you were at a certain level in the state, then you were sent to handle ASER for the state. Yeah. And you got a big statewide exposure as well. You're talking to everybody. So unifying, activities where people also grow quickly, I think have been also very important for us.
तो ऐसे कंपटीशन होता है, गुजरात से अरे आपने मेरे को इतना कम पैसा क्यों दे दिया, आपने दूसरे स्टेट को ज़्यादा दे दिया?
Actually, funnily नहीं होता है. I don't know why that is. होना चाहिए, but नहीं होता है. There has been, see, on the money front as well. So we have 3 sources of funds broadly. One is corporate social responsibility type funds, which are more recent in India. Second is kind of foundations, the big professional foundations. And third is people of Indian origin. Now, if I look at these 3 sources of money, they also quite naturally fund certain kinds of activities. So corporate social responsibility money largely goes to Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Haryana. Doesn't usually go to Chhattisgarh, Bihar, Jharkhand, Kashmir, because that's not where corporate India has a base. So we have to also balance the
right.
source of the money. Now, often the CSR money also comes with geographical limitations. But we've managed with whatever money we've had over the years to keep teams in I would say the more educationally backward parts of India. So we have big teams in UP and Bihar, because we feel that these are states in which heavy investment is needed.
Right.
That's not to say that we don't have big teams in Maharashtra, but the Maharashtra teams are largely funded through CSR funds. CSR. So it's a balance between need and availability, and constantly trying to push people who have the money towards areas. Like we have a very vibrant partnership with the Kashmir government. It's very difficult to, everybody would like to help Kashmir, but we've not been able to find, so we use our core funds. We do get unrestricted funds, particularly from our individual donors, to fund many of the unpopular, not unpopular, but areas in which there isn't a direct. So if I think about NRIs as well, they are from certain parts of India more. Wealthy people living abroad don't tend to be from Assam or Bihar. They tend to be Andhra, Tamil Nadu, whatever. So I think everybody is aware that the money balancing is a big act, and that our survival depends on us being spread. There is a need to spread out. There is a need to be in many languages. There is a need to have teams in different parts of the country, and given that, then who has more and who has less.
Can you maybe describe one individual's career trajectory? How they've started at the entry level and have grown in your organization? It'd be great if you could describe this.
I can think of many, but 2 in particular, because they are quite similar. One is called Nuzhat Malik, and the other is Parveen Sayyed. Both grew up in slums of Bombay and probably joined roughly around the same time as I did, and they were Balwadi teachers. Today, Nuzhat is the head of our UP program. She has 800 people reporting to her, runs big government program, big direct program, and Parveen is the person who heads our Urdu Resource Center, which is in itself quite something. She started as a Balwadi teacher, and today not only does she head this program, but she also got a PhD.
Wow.
Because she felt that in Urdu teaching, her own position would be stronger because she uses quite a non-traditional way of helping children to read in Urdu. That method has now even gone to Pakistan and so on. And she decided that somebody invited us to come and work in Kashmir. So she went. She's from Bombay, but last many years she's been in Hyderabad. She's built a huge team in Kashmir, a big partnership with the government, and that's why she started.
So what did, Nusrat and Parveen do differently than others?
Than others in their own backgrounds. So I think that what I think is a commonality, and which is probably true for many of such people within our organization, that they took every opportunity that came. So I remember Nusrat, I worked with her for 20 years. She was clearly a good Balwadi teacher, but we quickly could raise her to become the supervisor of her area. And as she became the supervisor of her area, she handled 20 Balwadis. Then we moved into out-of-school children programs. She's from Kurla in Bombay, and there we had we started working in the municipal corporation, and it was clear that she was someone who could really take an idea and then spread it. She is responsible. I mean, she has moved a lot. In fact, with me, I moved to Delhi after about first 4-5 years in Bombay, and she moved with me because she's originally from Basti in UP. So we had not that many Hindi-speaking people in Pratham. So when there was an opportunity to work in Delhi, naturally the Hindi-speaking people in Bombay were looked at, and she built a large part of the Delhi's Today's team. And then as we began work in UP, I said, Nusrat, tumko to wahan jana padega. So it's like she's been taken every opportunity. She's been good at what she does at her level, and I think they've actively looked for the next step. Not just happy with where you are. Now this has caused for both of them quite a lot of problems within their families, because this trajectory of going from your local community, acha meri beti kuch kar rahi hai, to is
managing 800 people in UP.
And they, both still struggle with English, much prefer speaking in Hindi, but the confidence that this is okay, is fine. And I would say that we have supported them to the extent we could at every step. Perhaps we could have supported them more. But I think that this incremental growth and being, you have to always take a step where you're not comfortable, because that's the only way you can, move ahead. And you need some support around you to be able to do that. Ideally support both from your family and from work. But, at least some of that, I think.
Rukmini, India में इतना काम है, तो आप अफ्रीका क्यों जा रहे हो तो?
Exactly. So one is, it's not like this is either or. Secondly, I would say that, when ASER started happening in India, it was quite curious for people from outside when they heard about it. So we invited people ki aap aao, see what we do well, see what we do badly, because I think when you take something, it's important that you make your own mistakes. Don't make the old mistakes, because that's kind of a waste, right? So learn whatever you can, make your own mistakes. And it was a way in which we just shared what we did. We didn't really, if somebody invited, then some of our young people would go for a few. And I would say that even our spread in India happened like that. It's not like we planned in 2000 to say we are going to be in every state in India. Somebody invited, somewhere government invited, somebody it was an individual. And then if somebody asks you, कि आपको जो पता है आप मुझे सिखा दो, तो you're most likely to say, हाँ, why not? So ASER, for example, the first adopter of ASER was Pakistan, and they even called it ASER, but it's actually not the same ASER. They decided, if somebody comes to your house and says, I like the name Pranav, मैं मेरे बच्चे का नाम Pranav दूँ, you can say मत दो, you can say दो, but वो अपना नाम रखेगा ना, उसको जो रखना है. So Pakistan, and then within 2 years Pakistan said, ये जो problem we are seeing, we want a solution. तो आपका जो solution है, why don't you tell us? Now, Pakistan is close by, and every now and then it's not so difficult to go, so you can help. Now Africa, say if people want help, should we say no? I feel no. We have 6,000 people. If 10 people, go every now and then to help, why not? Money, we will not spend the money that we need in India. I'm like a housewife. मेरे घर के पैसे मेरे लिए चाहिए मुझे. So, but दुनिया में पैसे हैं लोगों के पास और किसी के पास. So if people feel that they want to learn and they have the ability to, bring us, we are there not alone. We are going with JPAL, and again it's quite demand based. And I feel our job is to create. our teams may say something else, but I feel our job is if 1,000 people are created somewhere who know and have the capability to do what it takes to improve basic foundational skills of children, then we are happy to help to create that. That's not taking away from what we are doing here.
Right.
I think it's just adding, and actually in this last year that we've been talking a lot to outsiders, it's made us much more aware of our own strengths and weaknesses. So this Shisha is a useful thing also.
Thank you for sharing, all these deeply personal and professional moments. It was
Thank you for
really
inviting me. Very
wonderful
enjoyable, yeah.
having you here.